Now, in this extended interview, I've included Joanne's conversation with Tony, where Joanne also, in the Ammach era when we cooperated, Joanne did make a statement that she had certain experiences herself. The lead up to that, some of that she mentions in the conversation between Tony when I was mucking about with the camera. So this is the extended witness statement, the extended high definition edit with Joanne talking with Tony Topping at my house, November 29th, 2011. This is the edit. I've also provided a second ISOCAM edit with just Tony talking without those interbreak conversations. So that's a sort of a clean version. This is in high definition going back over 5 years now. Speaking in 2017 in February, we are now going back to November 29th. Tony Topping's first statement and his first actual open statement in the public domain of exceptional and serious issues which he's going through his life, some of which he repeated in subsequent programs on Channel 4 and subsequent edits and interviews he's done in other media. This is the Basis Project, the witnesses from the Ammach year.
Something I have to live with. It's something that I'll continue to live with. Yeah. And it's something that I should really stop apologising for, you know.
Yeah, you don't need to apologise.
No, you don't need to apologise.
So
but you feel that the world sneers at you.
No, we're not. So you can say
exactly.
that we're indicative of a new...
the new Vogue. Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to part 2 of our session with Tony Topping, who joined us all the way from Yorkshire. So thank you again, Tony. Now, we're going to pick up, Tony had just told us that he had a particular UFO. He's had various things happen, but this UFO is a particular one, and he understands that they're from Andromeda, perhaps, and Sirius B, and or both. I don't know whether it's both, we'll ask him. But also that they had manifested physically and that there had been some interaction. So we're going to pick that up there. And so, Tony, perhaps we can come to you. And I was saying, I think these, as far as I understand, these initial interactions at least seemed benign.
Yeah, the whole scenario is based on you holding a deck of cards that you don't know you've got, but they know you've got. You're a player. You're in the game. If you are somebody who commands
you
intent,
just don't know what your role is yet.
You don't know. You're a player. You no matter what. If you are somebody who commands intention and power in terms of the occult and the esoteric, you are, no matter what level of life you are, you'll go higher up because you're now a player in the game. As one very fine a guy who was into remote influencing and remote viewing said, and I do agree with that guy called Gerald O'Donnell. Don't agree with all of his work, but when it comes to in terms of what's termed remote influencing and remote viewing and all that kind of thing, what he studied, there's a lot to be learned from what these guys were studying in the 1970s. And so, you know, these things appear in the room. It's something I have to live with. It's something that
and when they appear, are you getting... Is there an exchange of information or a download?
There's a very gentle approach because it scares me. You know, this is not something that is... normal by any sense of the word.
No.
You know, normal. It's not normal. Well, it's actually a run-of-the-mill thing. I mean, they park up outside, you know, and they go to Tesco's every day. No, it's not a normal thing, but it's something I have to live with.
So coming forward then, there's been this gentle drip feeding, acclimatising you in a way to their presence, to what they look like even.
Yes, and the acclimatisation is present, and the indication of a hybrid integration continuum is what they do. Some of them do. Some of them are geneticists. They like to experiment with genetics.
Do you think you've been involved in a genetic program?
Yeah, I do. I think that something like that's happened, although of whatever happened there.
So do you think you have hybrid children, for example? Do you believe you have hybrid children, for example?
That's something that I won't discuss.
Right.
I think that's something I need to be very careful of because...
No, it's fine. A lot of people do. A lot of people do.
I think we better not go down that avenue. But it's interesting to see that the covert agencies that monitor people, like you see in films like the 4400 and a few of the other movies that we see in the mainstream media where they have these covert agencies following people, that is definitely what has happened to me.
So does that give you the impression that there is a collusion between our, say, an aspect of our...
I wouldn't say collusion, I would say confusion. I would say that among our governments on the UFO situation there is confusion, and don't well, you know this, but for those who are new to the subject, do not let them kid you on that they're not interested in it. They are. They take a very keen interest in it, and anybody who's having any liaison with the UFO situation is closely monitored. Somebody like me will be closely monitored and is closely monitored in whatever way possible, whether that be on Facebook, on Twitter, being followed. The incidents I've had in the pubs on 2 occasions now, way back this was, where, you know, it's quite spooky to have somebody say something to you that only you know what they're talking about, and they know in the game of things, and they've mentioned it to you as you walk past them.
So this is a complete stranger we're talking about?
It's somebody who was responsible for following me and harassing me. Oh, okay. We'll never get to the bottom of who he was. We'll never get to the bottom of... We'll never be able to prosecute or anything like that. Do you think that the
stalking, that following, do you think that's government?
No, I don't think it's government, no. Oddly enough, no. It's some kind of rogue element that is probably not government. Now, at first I thought it was government. At first I thought, but I've had to study it that much, and I've had to look at espionage, I've had to look at security issues, I've had to look at all these things, and it led me to conclude that no, it wasn't the governments that per se that would be doing that. I think most government, as I've seen time and time again, most people in government would be absolutely horrified if you were to present some of the real stuff that goes on with UFOs and the more, the more malevolent interactions that happen. But this is all about, I hasten to add, this is all noise. This is humanity is awakening, and it's all about our further integration with what's out there in the big world. And we have several, if not thousands, I don't know, but I think several possible futures that we're going to go down. And I think that part of the UFO interaction with some of us, not all of us, is about realising that we need to avert from a certain course, like a train going down a railway line. We need to change points. If we do not, well, there will be consequences. And that is what I've seen during the course of my extreme paranormal experiences, you know. Okay,
so let's have a chat about some of those paranormal experiences. So would these be involving at all UFO activity, or?
Yes, they do involve. They would involve UFO activity, and they would involve being present. They would involve kind of like technology that is being used that is like, to coin a phrase, in the film The Matrix or in the film Inception, to give people a bearing. If they watch the film Inception, especially Inception, that gives people a very useful bearing as to what goes on, because what happened there is that they go into like a very deep dream state. Now, what is quite interesting is within that dream state, the mind goes into some kind of other realm or other dimension. And it is quite probable, I'm making an educated guess from my experiences, that the mind, other people's minds, as in not of this world and from other dimensions, are also incepting into that environment as well. So you have a crazy situation occurring where there's a scenario going on where time does not exist, and we will possibly know it in that realm. Therefore, it's quite probable to suggest that you have an element of time-travelling interaction going on as well, which brings us probably nicely round to Alec New World.
We're just referencing Alec New World, who's a New Zealander who had 10 days of missing time, driving along, and suddenly he's in a different dimension, and 10 days later he's written a book called Co-Evolution, and again Tony was talking about that, and he was talking in his interviews, and the book is about the experience where these ETs or these others are in fact us from the future, or an aspect of us,
a possibility, an aspect. And that is correct.
And they are reverse engineering the timeline, basically.
Correct. And therefore you have a situation occur where you have an inception going on from ourselves in future human history. That's not written about in any UFO book. You won't see that written anywhere.
And what's interesting about that too is that Alec New World also had intense harassment, intense threats to his family, finances, prison, and all the rest of it. So he's now keeping a low profile. So you have to ask, why? What is it that the governments, these are governments, what are they scared of? What are they scared of us knowing as a group of people as a species.
Yeah, and I think it's more about the fact that they don't understand rather than knowing. I think that's more of the point, that they don't understand, and they're trying to piece it together. I mean,
but you have to wonder why they would threaten somebody who's had a legitimate experience.
I think it's because they're uneducated. Those people that threaten, it's because they don't understand what they're dealing with. They're uneducated, and they think. Remember that America at the end of World War II was very paranoid. It had just come out of the Manhattan Project. It had fought Japan, and it had UFOs coming in over Los Angeles. It was absolutely, there was an air war going on over the UFO air war of 1950 in America, where UFOs were being shot out the sky, and the Americans turned around to Churchill and said, "Oh, nothing going on, Mr. Churchill. It's all a big laugh. Don't worry about it." Meanwhile, there was dogfights going on with UFOs. Now, they strongly believed at the time, the US intelligence community in 1950, before the 1970s remote viewing program, they were looking at the psychic elements of UFOs, and they strongly believed, and I believe also, that portals ritual, sacrificial ritual, portals, the occult practices, when cranked up to a certain level of intention, all these magical ceremonies and that we see, and intensity, they had reason to suspect that a portal opened, and they had reason to suspect that the United States was being attacked by these UFOs from the foundation of the kind of these occult portals opening, and they were right on the money.
And I also wonder, and it's not a new thought, whether the Philadelphia experiment, let's say it happened, that caused a rift.
There's a possibility, there is. I mean, the Americans set up two covert agencies. They set up Majestic 12, and they also set up something called the Collins Elite in 1950.
I hadn't heard of this one.
And the Collins Elite were the ones that were looking at UFOs from a demological angle.
Really?
The Catholic Church, which is the biggest intelligence organisation in the world, and still is probably to this day, has studied the difference between demons, angels, and aliens very closely. And there's a very good interview on Binall of America.
Right.
Regarding a Catholic Monsignor who's an expert in demonology.
It's not Balducci, is it? Or?
Yes, Balducci, that's the one. Balducci.
He's now passed on, sadly.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh, hellfire. Well, he was the guy who was looking at those issues, and the US government was looking at those issues as well, because their planes were getting shot out the sky, and all across the world, aircraft accidents were increasing in 1950. Planes were being shot out the sky.
Well, they had Mansell, didn't they? Thomas Mansell. Go down in 46.
They did in 46, and they had various Korean air races. It was quite hilarious in a black comedy kind of caper what was going on, but it wasn't. It wasn't funny at all.
Well, people like, again, Wilbert, the Canadian radio engineer, actually, Wilbert B. Smith, was talking about the disassociation of the fabric, the atoms and the structure of the planes coming into contact or near contact,
quite common,
and causing the dissociation
it looked like
of the
something
material.
out of a Roadrunner movie where you had the cockpit and the pilot in midair, his airframe ripped to pieces by the UFO. And the other thing that spooked them was the UFOs coming over their UHF frequencies and calling family members names, and that actually caused a lot of Russian cosmonauts to crack up. A lot of them needed psychiatric help because
I don't know about that
they were subjected to something called space whispering, whereby when they were up in space, they were being whispered to about their family members. They were instructed that they were too young to venture outside Earth, that kind of thing. A lot of them needed psychiatric help because of that.
Very interesting.
So it's interesting, isn't it? And so America was also putting up with the situation regarding the Nazis, regarding Antarctica, of which Britain was deeply involved in. Before America was hunting the Nazis in Antarctica, Britain was doing it under something called Operation Tamerlan, which was a specialist thing they were doing. They were hunting the Nazis and the UFOs in Antarctica because they knew they were there. And America followed suit. So you had this scenario of America and other nations dealing with a UFO situation that was, to their perception, would be extremely malevolent. Little knowing that there are actually, in fact, there is transaction going on with more peaceful, albeit grey, in terms of the grey man, albeit the grey aliens can be grey people. They can have agendas, as Philip Corso said. They are, the US Army was aware of them. They were aware that they were abducting people, implanting them, and so on and so forth. But they just sat back and observed.
And do you feel, just bringing back to that point of implants, do you feel that you have any, or being subjected
to scalar wave, definitely so, and that can have some very freaky effect. I wouldn't say implanted, but I would suggest being in 1970, the KGB were looking at psychic warfare very heavily.
Indeed, yeah.
And they coined a phrase called the biophysical body, which is another definition for the soul. The Chinese called it something else, the Americans called it something else. But it was basically, as the ancient master said, it was amplification of the biophysical body, the soul.
Yeah.
So what would, in some cases, what would happen is that the soul, or the vessel that is the soul, is taken across time and space, as I perceive, and across our human version of what the Egyptian was called the afterlife, into a dimensional world that is alien, and then pushed back through again and replaced. So you're back in this, you haven't got a clue what's happened to you, but you're carrying all the echoes and signatures and all the stuff that is I can't even put it into words, but you've been exposed to a biological environment that your body is not familiar with, and you've been placed back in this normal environment,
which could then have a biological effect as you carry on living out your life.
As you carry on living out your life,
and also on the psychic and other levels.
And that's exactly what happens. And interestingly, that in those realms, I strongly believe that they have these dimensional aliens.
Do you think you've had an experience like that?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I know. Definitely, I have.
So we're just going to go back to that. Yes, definitely. And give us, maybe perhaps how many times you feel you might have been through that process, because it's like a honing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something's honing you.
Yeah, it is.
And what are they honing you for?
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. So we'll pick up that when Miles is ready.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So just going back to that point, then. I was just saying it's almost as if that's causing a honing to go on, to occur. Would you say that was?
It's about integration. It's definitely that's what we've said. It's about some of our species.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a walking bloody shambles. Frankly, why in God's name they'd pick me, I've no idea. But I can't be. Obviously, there's something about me that I'm not seeing in the deck of cards that they've seen, that they know of, that I'm not aware of.
Yeah. And you were also relating. It just popped into my mind that you related before that you thought there might be something to do with a bloodline. Personal to you.
I think it's a bloodline. I think there could be a bloodline.
Do you know where that would go to, or where that would
possibly be? Ancient Egypt beyond there? I would think. I would definitely think there might be something of that going on.
And have you had past life remembrances, or?
I wouldn't want to talk about that. Okay. That's something I'd keep to myself on that one. Yes, I have, and yes, I've been informed of what they were about because you've crossed over. You've crossed into somewhere else, across our boundary, the human reality, our boundary of time, space, the afterlife. When we depart this soul, we move into the next life. I strongly believe, through my experiences, that the kingdom of heaven, or what we talk of as the afterlife, this is what blew me away. This is something that I am kind of like got an educated guess on. That it is artificially created by a very advanced intelligence.
Which is what Alec New World was saying.
Specifically, the afterlife for humanity, when we depart this soul, has been created for us, which I find incredible.
It is.
And the other thing that I find incredible is that some of these ETs who are hybrid, who were born in a test tube, I have to ask them, do they have a soul?
Yes.
Do you know? Does she have a soul? And this is the thing that I'm going to ask her in years down the line.
Yes.
This is the thing I'll be asking.
Yet.
This is the thing I'll be asking in year, and hopefully, a year, 2 years from now, we can get a more accurate picture of what is going on, which is what it's all about. And it's important that we do. It's important that this is open. It's important that this is not suppressed, because this is the darker forces at work are quite intent on suppressing the human race, and are quite intent on leading them down a garden path that is very nasty if we don't heed the warning. I think that the presence of the UFOs over my home, in particular, were signalling a clear warning of where we are going in history. I definitely think that is why they're there. They've turned up. They've, for some reason, selected me. I've no idea why. I may go to the grave not knowing the full reasons why.
Yeah.
I'm prepared for that. I'm concerned that it's an unsafe environment for me. I mean, every frigging day you're exposed to something. Somebody like me is exposed to something.
Well, let me just stop you there, because you also mentioned at some point, or we discussed at another point, that you had attacks by by UFOs.
I've been attacked
occasions.
twice now, yeah, absolutely.
So, and would those attacks be from those that you have?
No, that's where we get the signal from noise element.
Okay,
so
let's
what
explore that.
Yeah, so what would happen is you'd get a scenario where it's quite interesting is the world of the paranormal and UFOs, because people will sit there and film a UFO. I did. I became dangerously obsessed with filming them, frankly, and at one point in the proceedings, in all my strange goings on, I was told, do not go out alone at night and film them on your own. This is what I was told. Don't do that. But I didn't heed that warning, and I went out on this particular evening, and I hear me. And I went out on this particular evening, and the camcorder wasn't working correctly. It just wasn't working correctly. And I remember seeing this UFO turn up, this ball of light UFO. You go on my YouTube channel, there's bloody balls of light UFO. I get sick of filming them. It's a very point. That is the point. These balls of light UFOs have been around us for centuries. They're not visiting aliens from another planet. They're more crypto-terrestrial. They've been around us for a very long time. And I had my suspicions at the time, before I'd explored what was going on in 1950 with America and the Collins Lake and all that kind of thing. I had my suspicions that these objects were Nazi in origin and from Antarctica, because there is a memo that was circulated during the time of Roswell, which indicated that there was a possibility that they were dealing with a nation, as in the Fourth Reich. They were dealing with a nation that was an off-world state. Not an off-world state, but a state that was not acknowledged but existed. To this day, that's possibly a possibility, which is why UFOs are bugging the bloody hell out of everyone, because there's a possibility that the Nazi element to them does still exist to this day. But this particular evening, I'd gone out, I was told not to film them on my own, and I went out, and the UFO turned up, and I remember the thing, it must have been about 1,000 feet up, and it just hovered at a distance of about 500 yards looking at me. It's like gunfight at the OK Corral. You're looking at it, it's looking at you. It's just a ball of light in the air, and it's just looking at you. What size
was it?
Like a football.
Right, yeah.
And it's hovering, and it's watching you, and you're watching it, and it's not pleasant, it's not nice. And I was thinking, I'm going to cop it here. It's gonna zap. It's gonna do something, and it did. It assaulted me, and flew off. And
what did it do? What was the assault?
We won't go into that. Okay. But it did do, and more fool me. But it made me, every time these incidents happened, more and more the noise level. It's all noise. All these UFO attacks and all the negativity, noise. Because really, the clean signal is out there if we just look. If we just look as a race of people,
it's the truth of the message.
The truth of the message is there, but all of a sudden, it's all this noise, and then getting through that's it. And then the second incident occurred when I was coming back from my night shift. What
sort of distance between these events, time-wise?
3 years, something like that. There is actually a clip which I'm sure of a slow-moving UFO, which I'm sure you'll use on the and. That's actually one of them that actually attacked me, and it's very menacingly moving around my garden, and it's slow moving, soundless, and it's just watching, because obviously humanity is behind the scenes ruled by something. There's something moving behind the scenes that we don't understand, and so I'm coming back from night shift, and all of a sudden this bloody thing appears from nowhere over the rooftops, nearly knocks me to the bloody ground, and it's like all your head's vibrating with it here. Your skull vibrates, and you're thinking they push it a bit further, you're going to be a goner, but they didn't. They always keep.
Was there any sound to this?
No. There's never any sound. But what I discovered after very close observation of standing outside for numerous nights filming them, was that these balls of light were of a particular type of UFO, and every time they were turning up, they weren't turning up over my house to communicate the message and all this kind of thing. That's what they were there for. They were wanting to observe the UFOs. What you're looking at is something. It's been around us for a very long time, and I observed that they were wanting to observe what I was filming as well. So they were, whatever
I've
it
come
was.
Across that before as well.
Exactly. And the other scenario that occurred was I saw a different type of UFO, like something out of The Abyss, for example. The film The Abyss, where they've got the Illuminous chasing them off. And I've seen that on a couple of occasions. So it's quite obvious that something going on behind the scenes in the affairs of human beings that we are not aware of. A very big game is being played, and we're not aware.
Why do you think you're attacked?
If you have the power of intention and the power of mastery, you're a player. You're a very big player.
So you can affect
the
material
yes.
and unmaterial world, let's say.
Yeah.
And they find that threatening.
Without being grandiose, they find they would find that. They would. I mean, as I say, I'm a shattered man from it now. I mean,
how did those attacks impact you, health-wise?
Mentally, you're traumatised. You're suffering post-traumatic stress disorder, or you're kind of like you're
What was
traumatised.
the instant, immediate effect? Were you knocked to the ground? Were you just dazed? How did it manifest in you?
It's like a slow volume. It's like somebody with if a volume level was a trauma thing. It's like somebody subtly increasing the volume.
Right.
So it wouldn't be it wouldn't be on the day it happened. It would be a week later or 4 days later, where the full shock would hit you.
So like a delayed shock situation.
All the time. It always has been. It's always been a delayed shock. You don't realise what's happened until it's happened, until a few days later.
And how did it impact? So mentally, I can appreciate there's a sense of trauma. I don't know how else you might want to express that.
It's a shattered mind. You carry a shattered mind, an exhausted mind. It's an exhaustion.
You're right.
It's an exhaustion where you're continually exposed. It's an exhaustion that you cannot put into words.
And what about physically? How were you physically?
Physically you're also exhausted, but it gets to the point. Physically you're okay, but mentally you're shattered.
Right. Okay.
You know, absolutely. And anybody would be exposed to.
Oh yeah.
You know, exposed.
But I know
to
some people have had physical trauma as a result of their interaction.
Some people have.
So at least though on those occasions, those two attacks didn't impact you on a physical level.
Not on a physical. They were designed to impact me mentally.
Yes.
Which can be far more perhaps
brutal.
No,
absolutely.
Can't it? Than,
it's whether it was both or one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just trying to get a handle on how it is sort of.
It's a lot of information, isn't it? But that I'm coming out with. But people need to separate the signal from the noise. Yeah. They need to realise this.
What did you take away from those two attacks? What did that mean?
A revealing to me of the true colours of what's going on in our world, and the fact that, for example, on the world stage, we see crisis after crisis. Yes. We see the banking crisis manufactured very well, you know, and you've got to hand it to them. And this is what seems to be the unveiling. It's this constant unveiling of the hidden agenda that is now not hidden. It's quite overt and in your face.
And do you think that this hidden agenda or the railroading of humanity into war, yet more war, strife and economic disaster, has any footing or anything at all linked with the UFOs?
I think that there are conditions, and this is what I said in the Alex Jones interview, which was withdrawn. They knocked it off their channel, didn't they? They censored it.
Yeah, we'll mention that in a second, if you don't mind. We'll just stick with this.
Because what I indicated that conditions are correct. Conditions are manifested for an Antichrist manifestation, which is kind of like.
So you think that's perhaps where this is heading?
Yeah.
Right.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. If we do not heed the warning, we are being warned. They're not taking the hint. World leaders, governments are not taking the hint from them at the moment. And I do strongly believe there'll be more UFO sightings until we take the hint.
So you think that the warnings are coming through the many sightings that there are currently?
Yes, I do. I think we are being warned.
So you think that's one manifestation of the warnings?
Correct. I think that they're continually. I think that it wouldn't be surprising if they continually keep turning up in bigger, just showing up in bigger craft, all that kind of thing. They're there, and I think that we are definitely being warned.
Okay, so it's like, the American government have now said in response to Steve Bassett's Paradigm Research Group, they had a big, huge signature. What is it called?
Petition.
Sorry.
Petition.
Sorry.
Petition.
Oh, good God, yes. And so Steve Bassett had this sort of 20,000 odd people petition gone out to Obama to say, come on, let's have this out on the table. And the American government said, nothing to report, actually.
Yeah,
absolute
baloney. Absolute baloney that it's nothing to report. Yeah, third time lucky. Third time lucky on that one.
Yeah.
Baloney. Absolute baloney.
So I'm quite interested. Actually, you disclose something but yeah, no, I want to go back. We can. I think that's the least of I think disclosure is happening anyway. But I'd like to. So we're about sort of 2000 now, aren't we? And I know you said, I took a note that you nearly died, you said in 2001, or you thought you were.
Yeah.
But I also want to pick up this Antichrist thing. So which way do you want to do it?
Right, okay. Well, I think...
Miles, tell me when you're...
Running.
I don't really know. Run with it, see what happens.
Okay, well, let's I want to... I'll let Miles... Big subject matter, but I also... want to carry on with our timeline, but just before we carry on with your timeline, the chronology of that, let's just explore that the Antichrist concept for a minute that you think is coming in, because I think it's not just perhaps a holographic impression that's going to be given.
Not.
There's a massive energy that is
the possibility. A possibility. It's a signal. It's a signal in time.
Yeah.
That is
Potential.
potential at the moment. Potential.
Yeah.
But I sincerely think that if we continue as we are, if we continue to neglect each other in the way that we're doing, if we continue with the way that's with things that are happening at the moment, it is not. How can I put this into words? They invaded Libya, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq. There's chaos everywhere. Austerity measures being presented in the UK at the moment. The austerity measures are nothing to do with austerity at all, but are part of a precise hidden agenda against the people of this country and of other nations as well. And these conditions all create like a manifestation in time further down a timeline that creates if you could imagine like a pulsing signal, like something out of the cosmos.
Yes.
There's a danger that in my opinion, from my UFO experiences and what I've been shown, there's a danger that could manifest into a full-blown reality and rise up. And if it does, you could have something on the scale of World War II occurring on this planet for the third time, which is something that I'm quite aware of, and is something that we all have to be aware of.
There are some people now who are talking about the amassing of armaments around Syria and that kind of thing.
That kind of thing. It is a thing that can be avoided. And I think we have to be. I think you have to be very careful.
There doesn't seem to be much political will to avoid it.
There isn't because they're not learning. They're not seeing what's going on around them. They would sooner bomb Iran and let people starve on the streets. There's money to bomb Libya. There's money to do all that kind of thing, but there's no money for our schools and there's no money for our education. But there's always money to do that kind of thing, and we're not learning. We have all these tools of communication, from cell phones to computers.
And yet most people have got the reading age of an 11-year-old.
Correct, indeed. And so
lucky.
if we don't, and this is what I gleaned from my UFO experiences, is that we were being warned. But there again, I have to be very questioning of that and very cynical of that after what I've been through and what I've witnessed. I have to just be cynical of all that I see.
And when you say what you've witnessed, again, is there something else on top of what we've already discussed?
Echoes through time.
Right.
Echoes through time is what I've witnessed. The future, echoes through time is it would be for example, the remote viewer Joseph McMonigal, he had a book called The Time Machine. He wrote a book called The Remote Viewing Time Machine, and it was all about him remote viewing to the year 4000 on a timeline.
Right.
And obviously what he'd be doing, he was the US Army's #1 remote viewer, and what he would be doing, he'd be picking up these signals in time and decoding them. So a lot of it is about that.
Do you have any thoughts or opinions about this? Is in respect of remote viewing, and I understand the remote viewers haven't been able to get over there is an event horizon around 2012, I'm sure around December 2012, and they're not able to remote view past that, as I understand it. Maybe there are some others that have done that so far, but not to my knowledge. Do you have any feelings yourself why that may be? Why we can't know or remote view beyond 2012 at the moment?
So why can't they remote view beyond 2012? That's an interesting question, because what they should be picking up is echoes in time. So not only should they should be seeing events that are echoing back at them from our future. They should be seeing that. So it's interesting to see that they're not seeing that, because
that was just that's the information that I have. Whether there's any change to that scenario, I don't know.
In that realm, in that when the mind's in that kind of awareness, when the remote viewing and all that kind of thing, time as we know it does not exist, and therefore for that reason, awareness of people. For example, there was an interesting thing that the aliens said to Alec New World. They said, "You're never in the place that you think that you are." And it's very interesting, is that, because there was an incident that happened to me in the supermarket only last week,
right,
where I picked up I was walking in the supermarket, and all of a sudden everybody's going about their business, and there was an old lady, and she was going about her business as well. But a higher level of awareness was doing something different. And what you were doing is you hear beyond normal hearing range.
Yes.
You hear what is imperceptible, and so I heard this woman say what she said, and it wasn't her, but it was her. But it was her, perhaps, in a next life, because time is just unbelievable. It doesn't exist. So what I'm saying is there's a possibility that although she was doing the shopping in Tesco's, she was also somewhere else, further down in time, signalling back, pinging all the way back, like Miles was talking about earlier, with the radio signals and the piggyback.
So what you heard, was it very relevant for you?
It was very relevant for me, yeah. It was a cry for help, and it's an echo through history. And that's what I see. So that's why I cannot understand why these remote sensors are not seeing these signals coming back at them.
That's just what I understand.
Yeah, it's just interesting, but it's part of the
getting
many
nearer,
things. Indeed.
There may be others who have, but
it's
I
part
haven't
of
looked at it recently.
I cannot give an accurate answer on that one, but all these goings on that I have to put up with are part of the crock of shit sometimes that I have to deal with, and it can be an absolute crock of shit. And there again, it can be very interesting. It can be very exciting, but sometimes it can.
So the stuff that's not great is that obviously harassment's not great, but is that ongoing for you?
It is ongoing, and I think that we need to look at oneself and ask where the doorways of the mind have opened to allow that to happen.
Yes, indeed, that's a very good point.
I think that this is where one needs to just reflect and find out what's gone on to cause these events, because it's all been very odd, and as I say, I may go to the grave not knowing the full answers as to what happened to me. But one does have to look inwards, I think, and try and fathom out what's going on.
Personal responsibility about the situation and find what is, a good place to start.
I'm open to all explorations and possibilities as to what has gone on with me, and I think that more crucially, as well as I've not got it all right. I don't know it all, and I may be way off piste with a lot of what I say, but it's just based on solid experience.
So have you just something to do on the family side? Have you been able to discuss any of this with any of your other family or family members, perhaps, or anything?
No, I don't even discuss it with friends, really.
Right.
The only people who I do deal with are Sasha, who you probably interviewed on occasion, and Nick Pope, of all people, the former MOD guy who gave me my first kind of gig with Channel 4, and then since then I've been doing odds and ends here for Sky, Edge TV, and the BBC, and all that kind of thing, which I enjoy, and TalkSport, who've been very good to me.
Yeah, so you were telling us that TalkSport that you're...
Yes, I'm a bit of a media whore lover. Yes, I love to whore it with the media. I do. No, TalkSport TalkSport have been really, really good to me.
And you're their resident UFO expert, I think, aren't you?
They have, and they kind of like I've done all sorts with them. There's been some hilarious moments with them when I've been left in the studio. That was something that happened where I was left in the studio just to answer calls.
Oh, really?
Presenter went out, Ian Collins. He just went out, had a fag and a coffee, and just left me to it, which is probably quite, it's quite shocking, really, because I couldn't have said anything, but and numerous things that happened there. But it is odd to note that I've done stuff for BBC News and the Sky, and what is odd is the fact that I did an interview for Alex Jones, the InfoWars channel.
Okay, so we're talking about the Alex Jones show, which Tony, you did an interview for. I don't know who the presenter was.
It was Paul Watson.
Paul Watson.
Well, Alex Jones was doing a money bomb project.
I don't know what a money bomb.
Money bomb project is whereby he raised over $500,000, I think, for his InfoWars channel. So and beyond that, I think he raised a lot of money. And basically, to cut a long story short, Paul. I emailed Paul because I understand that there've been some hoo-ha regarding InfoWars taking the mick out of UFO researchers. So I emailed Paul and I said, look, I'm willing to come on and stand up to the metal as well. So he said, oh great, come on my show. He says 4th of November at 11 o'clock in the morning, whatever.
That's this year.
Yeah, that's this year. Yeah. So I went on there and I did a great interview. There was nothing wrong with it, and it was interesting because I wasn't feeling myself that morning. I really was not feeling myself that morning, but I did a good job, and I thought it was great to be part of this. And then to my horror, they uploaded the clip. And it was me, it was a photo of me at a party looking like this. At a party, drunk. It's my happy face. And they'd used that image of that big smiley screaming like a lunatic look and uploaded it to their YouTube channel while I was interviewing it. And the comments on the clip was kind of like, Jesus, who's this guy? What the hell's this? Blah, blah, blah. And then somebody was going, oh, he's interesting though, isn't he? Oh, yes, it's very good. And it was going up to about 10,000 hits. And I emailed Paul to say, look, Paul, I'm not impressed with this image. What we can do about it.
Where did they get the image from?
They got it from my Facebook page.
Oh.
But out of all the images, they choose to use the one that would draw ridicule and piss-taking.
Oh, right.
There was an intention there, I'm sure, and I make no apology for saying that. So I emailed Paul Watson. He said, I don't know, mate, what's going on. I'll look into it. And he emailed me to Paul Watson and said, they're going to re-edit it, don't worry. And it was then that I never heard anything from them at all. And Mr. Watson ignored my emails because he wasn't man enough to address the issue, and neither was Alex Jones. He was not man enough to address the issue either about it. And the issue was that it had been censored by them. They took the clip off. They indicated that it was across all platforms. But it's not across all platforms because the platforms, i.e. Blip TV and other channels that it went up on, all link to their YouTube channel. So if it's removed off the YouTube channel, none of the other internet channels can see it. So this was censorship. I class this as censorship. And they weren't man enough to address the issue, and they're still not man enough to address the issue with me about it. And I've no explanation from them as to why they removed it. And yet you have a radio station like TalkSport, a commercial broadcaster, who's let me go on their programmes and sound off about the UFO scenario. I've said, all sorts on there. No censorship. Uploaded, not a problem.
And when did they take off your interview?
It was about 3 days after it went up. But it was the image that they'd used and the way
about 3 weeks ago.
And the way they'd gone about it was frankly disgusting.
Yeah.
And yet they accused commercial broadcasters of being part of the conspiracy, and they end up censoring me. And the thing is that they're not the judge and jury. It should be the right of the listener to decide whether they like it or not. They might not like it, they may like it, but that doesn't give them the right to censor me, like they did. And they removed it.
And also to select on purpose.
Yeah, they did. They knew what they were doing.
Material that is not
out of all the pictures on my Facebook page, they selected that one. That particular one where I was screaming like a banshee at a party. It was my birthday, and they selected that one.
Which you're allowed to scream like a banshee.
Of course, but they knew what they were doing. But they're not man enough to address the issue.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? It's you have to again sort of question how come and why those people are in such a place of intent and
it's all very well, Mr. Jones and Mr. Watson. It's all very well sitting there in front of your big InfoWars desk and Mr. Watson doing his nightly news reports about the tyranny, the oppression. But you come and have a go and think you're hard enough when it comes knocking on your door, when you're up against it, when you're face to face with what you're talking about, and I don't think any of you have experienced what that's really like. And it's a disservice to everyone, is that, who have stood up for this tyranny that is going on behind the scenes and have put their lives at risk that you censor people. I think it's disgusting, and I don't know how many more people have been censored, but I think it's frankly disgusting that they stand there in their ivory tower and really have no clue what it's really about. They say they do, but that's at an intellectual level. Some of us have faced this head on. Some of us have seen this for what it is, and it's absolutely disgraceful. We've had UFO researchers floating down rivers. We've had CIA directors who wanted to do disclosure floating down rivers in canoes. Dr. Stephen Greer's assistant dying of cancer, being targeted. Carla Turner, other researchers dying. It's not a bloody joke, and that's what really got to me. Yeah. It's not a bloody joke, but yet they put on this bloody picture of me screaming like a loon. and it's just bloody wrong, you know, and that's really what I've got to say on the issue.
Good. Well, let's leave them to their
Anyway, there we go.
And we'll get back to ours. So let's explore more of your experiences. We're coming up to 2001. Tell us, because I know there was some significant event there for you. So
well, I mean, during the process of my experiences, I was subjected to a technology that is, you could, I mean, there's all kinds of ways you could describe it, but we'll say it was an advanced technology that delivered certain effects that would make you comply. There's a special word for this technology, but basically the technology is developed to make somebody who might be considered subversive comply. Compliance. Now, I'm quite a patriot, actually. I love my country very much. I wouldn't class myself as subversive in any way, really. I'm a liberal anarchist, perhaps, but, you know, I love Britain. And it's shocking to see all this going on. But I would be, in January 2001, I was awoken to the most horrific attack, and it was unbelievable. And I have to say that I'm not sure who delivered it. I'm not sure what the source was behind this. Right. But if you can imagine the shower scene in Hitchcock and the birds, I think it is, with the knife. I can't remember. There's a
Psycho.
Psycho
with
if you can imagine somebody in your head doing that to you, and if you can imagine the fact that they've triggered the technology in such a way so that you cannot wake up. You think that it's so bizarre, it's unreal. You can't wake up. Would you call it like
a lucid dreaming?
It's an extreme form of lucid dreaming with all the sound effects, and it's not just lucid dreaming. It's like physical attacks within like an Inception landscape, it's horrific. And I remember in January 2001, it was ferocious, and I actually thought that I was going to. I didn't think I'd survive the following night.
Was there something that again precipitated this event?
There possibly was.
Well, that you're aware of.
Yeah, I am aware of it, and I think it's best that we'll leave it at that. Right, I'm a more experienced man now. I know what it was. I know roughly now what the score is with it all, and shit happens. And I don't mean that, Harry, but it's my way of dealing with it. It's the only way I can deal with it.
So tell us about the event.
So what have you got? You've got a scenario where you have an artificial scenario downloaded into you. It's similar. It's like an Inception.
Like a games program.
It's like a games program.
And
it
you're
is.
the butt of it.
And let us say we are in a location that is of esoteric significance.
Right.
We're in a church. It was in a church where it happened. But needless to say, that is kind of like the artificial programming that presents that. The construct, as it were, that presents that to you. And then you have the scenario of that construct attacking, going hostile against you, and you being, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very sinister, because part of you is manipulated in such a way that you're pleasantly relaxed, but you're being attacked. And it's bizarre because the mind accepts it.
Well, if you're relaxed, you also can't defend.
Correct, and it's very frightening because the mind doesn't seem to comprehend what's going on.
So it's like a compartmentalisation, except both parts are aware at the same time.
Oh, it's sinister because both parts are aware at the same time, and you're being attacked, and you don't know why. You don't know why it's happening.
Could you see your attackers?
Oh, absolutely. And you don't know why it's happening. But you know that it is happening. It's a lot for people to handle, so I think we'll leave it there. Right. But it was pretty nasty stuff.
So what do you think that was about?
I think we'll keep that off camera. I think we'll keep that confidential as well. Okay. Yeah, what that was about. I think we'll.
So you've recovered, obviously.
No,
you're here.
I'm here.
You're here.
I'm here, but
recovered enough to interact and be in
to be in. It's been going on for a very long time. This is not new for me. This is old news, you know. But it's been going on for a very long time.
So the effect of that then would probably be to make you more cautious.
They identified themselves
right.
as a kind of like the enforcers of the UFO silence, the enforcers of keeping it all on the lid.
Right.
They identify themselves as being an unelected police of the silence.
So you must be quite close to something then.
I am, yeah. I probably am, and I'm not aware of it though. I'm probably not aware of it. Somewhere
probably
along
just
the line,
marching ahead and
yeah,
pushing the boundaries,
yes,
constantly going.
Yes. A bit like that Eric Sykes film with the plank. You know, honestly, it is. You'll laugh too, please, because it is. It's absolutely hysterically funny. It is, isn't it? It's like me with the plank. You know, I don't know what I'm doing, but there you go.
But people are being knocked down.
Yeah, but people are being knocked down. Yeah, exactly.
The plank.
The plank. Yeah.
But Ross, I think it's you that's being knocked down.
But it's like
you're not the one carrying the plank, obviously.
I think that's.
So you're the one hitting the deck all the time. Bloody hell, he's got up again. Oop, bloody hell.
Yes, they can't keep me down, love. They can't. No, they can't. But I mean, there was some hilarious moments going on. I was out with a film crew a few years back on a local beauty spot, and we're all sat there looking out. It's pitch black at night, and I'm saying to them, "There's no UFOs going to turn up tonight. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing's happened." Oh, right, they goes, "Well, nothing's happened. Okay, well, we all disappeared from our location, went our separate way, and we played back the tapes. And where we're standing looking out, one of these bloody objects just turns up, comes in like that, looks at the camera and just flies off again. And we've got our backs to it. It hasn't. I mean, it's playing a game. They're under intelligent control. Whatever it is under intelligent control, and it just presented itself and then flew off again. And it's just part of the crazy stuff that goes on. I mean, you know, some of the stuff that's happened to me is just hysterically funny at times.
Yeah.
You know.
And so you've kind of, if you haven't bounced, you've certainly scrambled your way back up after that incident in 2001.
Exactly.
And so, you know, another 10 years on now. So take us through some of the events that have had a UFO ET element to them over these last 10 years that have been significant for you.
I think the most significant ones is probably, as I've said, is hearing the echoes of time and being placed into another dimension and being placed back again, having not awareness of that, and the continuing interaction with the object that I filmed in November through the months of May to November 1999, which is on my. You could scrap all the other clips and just have them free on my YouTube channels there, and I have reason to believe that I will be filming something like that again, a bit bigger and a bit bolder next time. I think that's going to happen.
Yeah, and how do you? So just going back to this, so now 2001 and 2011, 10 years, has there been any other material incursion or interaction either from other forces?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Are you able to tell us about those?
Oh,
no. Okay, dokie.
No. It's because we're at a level at the moment where I feel we've just set the level slightly for people to understand.
Right, okay.
And I just have to be very careful what I say for my own personal reasons.
No, absolutely fine.
You know, and safety reasons as well.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, yes, it is still ongoing, and it is about integration. And why they've picked me, God only knows, but I hold a deck of cards that I'm not aware of. And it is about a warning from our future history. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's about that as well.
And so we've mentioned the beings from from Sirius B and Andromeda. Are there any other entities or beings that have made themselves known to you?
There is an element of the of time travel involved. Right. There is an element in the
Have
UFO
you experienced
situation.
It yourself?
Yes, if you've crossed the dimension of time and soul and space, as I class it, the sea of.
Yeah.
If you have crossed from time, our realm, 3 dimensions, into like I would suggest the afterlife, and then you cross into their dimension. Time is not as we know it, and you're kind of like a big tuner that's having its tuning knob turn, picking up absolutely all kinds of things. You've got to remember, when you go into their dimension, that they're forward in time from us, from where we are now. Their lives, they as people, are forward in time from where we are now. Therefore, it stands to reason that you have effectively time travelled.
Yes,
you have obviously in a very. I'm not a scientist. I'm sure somebody could explain it better than me. But that seems to be the paradox that's occurred. Then you put back again you have experienced without knowing it. You have probably gone through human history without even knowing it, not even aware. But it leaves an echo. It leaves a trace with you. You're like I don't know, like a beacon. It's very weird. It really is. But that's what happens.
And have you noticed also any development in your own skills, abilities, or
no, not at the moment. No, I am suffering from. I'm shattered. I'm mentally shattered with it. And I really, perhaps maybe I'm considering taking a break from it all. I don't know, but I seem to just, some of my friends are a bit concerned that I may be exploited by the media, and they're a bit concerned about that. I mean, I've met a couple of friends. One friend in particular who's been like an angel to me. I mean, he's been like an absolute angel, and I don't think I could have got through without him. I mean, he works hard, he plays hard. And I just don't think without and I've got other friends as well.
So they think then that if you go forward more,
they
publicly.
do. Yes, that they believe that therefore there should be an appropriate remuneration and a strong remuneration after what I've been through, so they're concerned that I might be exploited in some way.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah, indeed.
So how do you feel all of this wealth of experience then has impacted you overall as a person, and what you've gained from it?
Well, I think at the moment, I think eventually, I think further down the line, I'll be in the mainstream public media as I want to be, and I think that I'll be making a difference in where I want to make a difference. It may be possible. There's a possibility that I will possibly put these experiences on the back burner and concentrate on where I want to go. I mean, for example, I'm currently single at the moment, and I haven't had a relationship for a number of years, and it's sad. I'm so aware of my experiences. I think, how in God's name could somebody put up with this with me?
A lot of experiences have that issue. Some of them have chosen to be celibate because they've got all on just to deal and process with what they're going through.
And it's sad. It really is. It really is. I mean.
All right. So yes, a lot of experiences. They have all on just to integrate their experiences anyway. So they don't actually have emotional space for their for a partner or a long-term partner anyway. So, but it does seem to be a casualty, if you like, aspect.
A lot. There's a cost.
Yes.
There's a very huge cost, and anybody who thinks that they can ridicule this, and they do. Society, mainstream society, not so much yourselves, obviously, and people who deal with it, sneers at you, smirks at you.
But I think that's again another of the things is that many have felt isolated and ostracised.
Indeed.
So this is what Ammach is doing, helping to address this by giving you folks a platform, an opening to the world in a sympathetic way, which is important. But do you feel you've grown? You
Absolutely,
I
mean, I certainly have grown in many ways. Maybe in ways that I can't even comprehend yet.
And probably
there's nothing spectacular in my story to tell you other than the crazy stuff that's gone on as far as although people will go, my God, how does he cope with that? But there's nothing I'm coming out with about my interaction with them that's mind-blowing. It's all very elusive. There's just none of what's written about in the mainstream, the UFO press or in books is really happening. It's all very different with me, and I can't find answers from them, so I have to go it alone. There's just no. I mean, Whitley Strieber, you would think a very good researcher. Even in his material, there's nothing I can find in his material that makes any sense to me.
Well, also it may be that at this time in our history, there is a ramping up of experience and things going on for humanity, and so there is no benchmark.
There isn't. No,
there is no benchmark.
There is, and we've got to try and find the answers. Or
so
have
in
we,
a way,
we
you're
just
a
walk
way
away?
shower.
So
you're helping yourself and helping, by raising the bar consciously and your consciousness.
That's correct.
Then you're helping the whole of humanity to develop a different signal.
You think if somebody could do that, in closing, you think if somebody could do that, could lift humanity's consciousness, the consequences of that on mass lifting of human consciousness is quite unbelievable. I think, considering that there are agendas at play, hidden agendas that are happening out there that that would be affected by that. I think it's something that we have to be aware of and we have to strive for.
Well, I think it's been an absolutely fascinating discussion, and really thanks very much for sharing. And when you feel that you've got some more insights or something to update with us, please feel free. Yeah. And if there's anything you want to say in just closing, we have another moment.
I think don't be put off. I think do some research. Even if you're a cynic, do have a look at the UFO research. Sorry, I've not got a book to plug. I'm too tired to write one. I'd love to write one, but I haven't got a DVD to plug either. No book, no. I've not got a book to plug. No DVD either. Just look at research, because I'm too bloody knackered after what's been going on to write anything at the moment. But I'm sure that'll come out in due course. But thank you for having me anyway.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Miles, again. And I have to thank Tony for coming all the way from Yorkshire, because I think he shared some really important insights, and there's a lot to take in. But you know, this path isn't easy, and the information isn't necessarily easy to assimilate, but it is thought-provoking. And I just think that we all need to keep our minds open, and like the parachute, works best when it's open. Thank you. See you at another interview.